The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and regret, the kind that lingers when words cut deeper than intended. Evelyn Harper, 70 years young, stood at her stove, stirring a pot of apple chutney, her hands steady despite the tremor in her heart. Her family's voices echoed in her mind, sharp and unyielding from last night's dinner. "Mom, you're so embarrassing," her daughter Claire had said, rolling her eyes when Evelyn sang an old jazz tune at the table. "Grandma, why can't you just act normal?" Her teenage grandson, Ethan, had added, his phone screen more interesting than her stories of dancing under the stars in the 70s. Even her son, Michael, had sighed, muttering about how her over-the-top personality made family gatherings a spectacle. Evelyn's wooden spoon paused mid-stir. Embarrassing. The word stung like a splinter under her skin. She'd spent decades raising them, cheering at their games, sewing costumes for school plays, and teaching them to laugh through life's chaos. Yet now, at the cusp of her 70th birthday, they saw her as a caricature of flamboyant old woman who didn't know her place. She set the spoon down, her lips tightening. If they thought she was embarrassing, she'd show them just how bold she could be. The idea struck her like a match in the dark. Her birthday was in 2 weeks, and she'd been planning a quiet dinner, bowing to their complaints about her extravagant parties. But no more. If her family wanted normal, she'd give them unforgettable instead. Evelyn wiped her hands on her apron, her eyes gleaming with defiance. She didn't need their approval to throw a party so grand they'd never forget it. And the centerpiece. She'd hire the one person they'd least expect, their boss, David Langston, the CEO of Langston Enterprises, where both Claire and Michael worked. Not just to attend, but to perform. David wasn't just a suit. Evelyn had met him at a company picnic last summer, where he'd strummed a guitar and sung with a voice that could hush a crowd. Claire had called him intimidating at work, a man who commanded boardrooms with a glance. Perfect. If her family thought her singing or stories were embarrassing, what would they say when they're polished? Powerful boss took the stage at her birthday, crooning jazz standards at her request. The thought made Evelyn chuckle, a spark of mischief igniting her spirit. She spent the morning on her ancient laptop, tracking down David's contact through a mutual friend from her book club. Her fingers trembled as she typed the email, not from nerves, but from excitement. "Dear Mr. Langston," she wrote, "I'm Evelyn Harper, Claire and Michael's mother. I'm turning 70 and throwing a party. I'd love for you to perform a few songs, Jazz. If you're willing. Name your price." She hit send, her heart racing like she was 20 again, sneaking into a club to hear Ella Fitzgerald. David replied within hours, his tone warm and intrigued. "Evelyn, I'm flattered. I don't usually perform, but for you, I'll make an exception. No charge, just promise me a slice of birthday cake." Evelyn laughed aloud, her kitchen suddenly brighter. The plan was in motion. She spent the next few days in a whirlwind, booking a venue charming outdoor pavilion by the lake and hiring a caterer for a menu of her favorite comfort foods, fried chicken, cornbread, and peach cobbler. She sent invitations to her family, keeping the guest list small but adding a cryptic note, "Expect surprises." Claire called the next day, her voice wary. "Mom, what's this about surprises? Please don't do anything weird." Evelyn smiled into the phone, her tone sweet but unyielding. "Oh, honey, it's just a little party. Nothing to worry about." She hung up, imagining Claire's face when David stepped onto the stage. Michael texted later, asking if she needed help with setup. "No, dear," she replied. "I've got it all under control." And she did. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt like the director of her own story, not a side character in theirs. The days blurred into a frenzy of preparations. She dug out her old dresses, choosing a sapphire blue gown that shimmered like the night sky, a relic from her dancing days. She practiced her own performancia song she'd written in her youth, one she'd never shared with her family. If they thought her embarrassing, she'd lean into it, but on her terms. She'd show them the woman who'd once dreamed of stages, not just stovetops. The night before the party, Evelyn sat on her porch, the lake's breeze carrying the scent of jasmine. She sipped chamomile tea, her heart a mix of nerves and resolve. Her family's words still stung, but they no longer defined her. This party wasn't just about proving them wrong, it was about reclaiming herself. She'd spent too long dimming her light to fit their idea of normal. Tomorrow, she'd shine brighter than ever, and David Langston's performance would be the spark that lit the fire. As the stars twinkled above, Evelyn hummed her song, her voice soft but steady. She wasn't just throwing a party, she was rewriting her story. And no one, not even her family, could stop her now. The morning of Evelyn's 70th birthday dawned with a sky so blue it seemed to promise magic. She woke early, her bones creaking but her spirit soaring. The pavilion by the lake was already buzzing with activity caterers arranging tables, florists weaving garlands of sunflowers and roses, and a small stage crew setting up lights and speakers. Evelyn stood at the edge of the setup, her sapphire gown folded carefully in her car, her heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and defiance. Today wasn't just a celebration. It was a declaration. She spent the morning overseeing every detail, her voice firm but kind as she directed the crew. The tables were draped in cream linens, each centerpiece a burst of color that matched her vibrant mood. The menu cards listed her favorite dishes, and a small jazz band hired as a backup for David tuned their instruments, filling the air with soft notes. Evelyn's eyes lingered on the stage, where a single microphone stood, waiting for her moment. She hadn't told anyone about her plan to sing. Not David, not the band, and certainly not her family. It was her secret, a gift to herself. By noon, guests began to arrive, old friends from her book club, neighbors who'd known her for decades, and a few cousins who still laughed at her stories. Claire, Michael, and Ethan arrived together, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Claire, in a sleek blazer, scanned the pavilion with narrowed eyes. "Mom, this is a lot," she said, gesturing at the decorations. Michael, ever practical, checked his watch. "How much did this cost?" "Mom, you didn't need to go all out." Ethan, glued to his phone, barely looked up. Evelyn smiled, her heart steady. "It's my birthday, dears. Let me have my fun." She mingled with her guests, her laughter ringing out as she shared stories of her youth dancing in smoky jazz clubs, sneaking out to watch meteor showers, falling in love with her late husband under a harvest moon. Her friends listened, their eyes bright with admiration. But her family hovered at the edges, their discomfort palpable. Evelyn didn't care. She felt alive, her spirit unburdened by their judgment. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting a golden glow over the lake, David Langston arrived. He was taller than Evelyn remembered, his silver-flecked hair catching the light, his suit tailored but relaxed. He carried a guitar case, his smile warm as he approached her. "Evelyn, this is quite the setup," he said, his voice smooth as velvet. "Ready to make some memories?" Evelyn's heart skipped. "Oh, David, you have no idea." She introduced him to her friends, noting the flicker of surprise in Claire and Michael's eyes when they saw their boss. They hadn't known he was coming, let alone performing. Good. Let them squirm. Dinner unfolded under a canopy of twinkling lights, the air filled with the clink of glasses and the hum of conversation. Evelyn sat at the head table, her family on one side, her friends on the other. The food was perfect crisp fried chicken, buttery cornbread, and cobbler so sweet it brought tears to her eyes. She caught Ethan sneaking a second helping, a rare smile breaking through his teenage apathy. Claire, though, kept glancing at David, who sat a few tables away, chatting easily with guests. Mom, why is Mr. Langston here? She whispered, her tone sharp. Evelyn just smiled. You'll see, sweetheart. As dessert was served, the jazz band took the stage, playing a soft rendition of Summertime. Evelyn's heart raced. It was almost time. She excused herself, slipping into a small tent to change into her sapphire gown. The fabric hugged her frame, its shimmer catching the light as she stepped out. A few guests gasped, their applause warm and genuine. Evelyn felt like a queen, her chin high, her eyes bright. She caught David's nod from across the pavilion, a signal that he was ready. The band paused, and Evelyn took the microphone, her hands steady despite the flutter in her chest. Thank you all for coming, she said, her voice clear and strong. Turning 70 is no small thing, and I wanted to celebrate it my way with the people I love and the music that's carried me through life. She paused, her gaze sweeping over her family. Claire's eyes widened. Michael shifted uncomfortably, and Ethan finally looked up from his phone. But tonight isn't just about me, Evelyn continued. It's about surprises. So, please welcome a very special guest, David Langston. The crowd erupted in applause as David strode onto the stage, his guitar slung over his shoulder. Claire's jaw dropped, and Michael's fork froze midair. Ethan whispered, "No way." David grinned, his presence commanding yet warm. "Evelyn, this one's for you," he said, strumming the opening chords of Fly Me to the Moon. His voice was rich, soulful, filling the pavilion with a magic that hushed every guest. Evelyn swayed to the music, her heart soaring. This was her moment, her triumph, and it was only the beginning. David's performance was a spell, weaving through the crowd like a warm breeze. His fingers danced over the guitar strings, each note of Fly Me to the Moon lifting Evelyn's spirit higher. She stood near the stage, her sapphire gown catching the glow of the lights. Her eyes locked on David as he sang. The crowd was entranced, swaying, some mouthing the lyrics. But Evelyn's gaze flickered to her family, their faces a mix of shock and unease. Claire's hands were clenched in her lap, Michael's brow furrowed, and Ethan's phone lay forgotten on the table. Good, Evelyn thought. Let them feel the weight of this moment. David transitioned into The Way You Look Tonight, his voice softening, intimate, as if singing to Evelyn alone. She felt a pang of memory her late husband, Tom, humming that song as they danced in their living room, her head on his chest. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them back, refusing to let sorrow dim her fire. This night was about reclaiming her joy, not dwelling on loss. As David finished, the crowd roared, and he bowed, his eyes meeting Evelyn's with a conspiratorial wink. One more? He asked, loud enough for the microphone to catch. She nodded, her heart pounding. It was time. Evelyn stepped onto the stage, the microphone cool in her hand. The crowd hushed, their faces a mix of curiosity and surprise. Her family's eyes widened. Claire's mouth formed a silent what, while Michael leaned forward, tense. Ethan's eyebrows shot up, his phone now a distant memory. Evelyn took a deep breath, the weight of their judgment fading under the spotlight. This is a song I wrote a long time ago, she said, her voice steady but laced with emotion. I never shared it because I thought it wasn't good enough. But tonight, I'm done hiding. The band, brief just minutes before, struck up a slow, jazzy melody. Evelyn's voice rose. Soft at first, then stronger, each note carrying decades of dreams and doubts. The song was about a girl who loved too fiercely, laughed too loudly, and lived too boldly for a world that tried to tame her. Her voice cracked on the high notes, raw and unpolished, but it was hers, authentic, unapologetic. The crowd leaned in, some wiping tears, others smiling. Her friends from the book club clapped along, their pride palpable. But Evelyn's eyes were on her family. Claire's expression softened, her hands unclenching. Michael's frown eased, replaced by a flicker of awe. Ethan, for once, was still, his eyes wide with something like respect. The song ended, and the pavilion erupted in applause, louder than for David. Evelyn stood, breathless, her chest tight with triumph. She'd done it, not just sung, but bared her soul. If they thought her embarrassing before, what did they think now? David joined her on stage, his arm around her shoulders. Evelyn Harper. Everyone, he called, and the crowd cheered again. He leaned in, whispering, "You're a star." Evelyn laughed, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She stepped off the stage, her gown swishing, and made her way to her family's table. Claire stood, her eyes glistening. "Mom, I didn't know you could do that," she said, her voice small. Michael nodded, his usual reserve gone. "That was incredible, Mom." Ethan, still stunned, managed. "Grandma, that was dope." Evelyn smiled, but she wasn't ready to let them off easily. "I'm glad you think so," she said, her tone warm but pointed. "Because I've spent too long worrying about what you think of me. Tonight, I did this for myself." The words hung in the air, heavy but liberating. Claire reached for her hand, but Evelyn pulled back gently, needing space to savor her victory. The party continued, the jazz band playing upbeat tunes as guests danced under the stars. David stayed, mingling with the crowd, his presence a quiet endorsement of Evelyn's boldness. She danced with her friends, laughed with her cousins, and even twirled Ethan around, his awkward grin a rare gift. But beneath the joy, a question lingered. Had her family truly seen her? Or was this just a moment's grace? As the night wound down, Evelyn stood by the lake, the water reflecting the moon. David joined her, his guitar case in hand. "You surprised me tonight," he said, "not just with the song, but with your courage." Evelyn looked at him, her eyes soft. "I surprised myself," she admitted. "But I'm not done yet." She didn't know what came next, but for the first time in years, she felt ready to find out. The night had changed her, and maybe, just maybe, it had changed her family too. The party's glow lingered in Evelyn's heart as she woke the next morning, her sapphire gown draped over a chair like a trophy. She sipped coffee on her porch, the lake calm in the distance, and replayed the night David's soulful performance, her own song pouring out under the lights. The stunned faces of her family. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as the embarrassing mother or grandmother, but as Evelyn Harper, a woman with fire in her soul. Yet a quiet unease tugged at her. Had her family's reactions been genuine, or were they just caught up in the moment? Claire called before noon, her voice hesitant. "Mom, last night was unexpected. Can we talk?" Evelyn agreed, inviting her over for tea. Michael and Ethan tagged along, arriving with a box of pastries a peace offering. Perhaps. They sat in Evelyn's cozy living room, the air thick with unspoken words. Claire fidgeted, her usual confidence absent. "I didn't realize how much your singing meant to you," she said. "I guess we've been hard on you." Michael nodded, his eyes on the floor. "We didn't mean to hurt you, Mom. It's just, You're so different from us. Evelyn's heart softened, but she held her ground. Different doesn't mean wrong, she said, her voice firm yet kind. I've spent my life loving you, supporting you, but I'm more than just your mother or grandmother. I have dreams, too. Ethan, slouched on the couch, looked up. Your song was cool. Grandma, why didn't you tell us you could do that? Evelyn smiled, a mix of pride and sadness. Because you never asked. The conversation wasn't easy. Claire admitted she'd been embarrassed by Evelyn's big personality at company events, fearing it reflected on her at work. Michael confessed he'd wanted her to tone it down to avoid family gossip. Ethan, in his blunt teenage way, said he thought her stories were extra, but admitted he'd never really listened. Their honesty stung, but it was a start. Evelyn shared her own truth, how their words had made her feel small, how she'd dimmed her light to fit their expectations. Last night, she said, I decided to stop hiding who I am. Claire's eyes welled up. I'm sorry, Mom. I want to know you, the real you. Michael reached for her hand. And this time, Evelyn let him take it. We'll do better, he promised. Ethan shrugged, but his small nod spoke volumes. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a crack in the wall between them, a chance to rebuild. Over the next few days, Evelyn felt a shift. Claire texted her a link to a jazz playlist, asking for recommendations. Michael stopped by to help with her garden, listening as she shared stories of her youth. Ethan, to her surprise, asked to hear more about her songwriting. Small gestures, but they mattered. Evelyn began to see her family not as critics, but as people grappling with their own insecurities, just as she was. She also kept in touch with David, who sent her a recording of his performance as a keepsake. You inspired me, Evelyn, he wrote. Don't stop shining. His words fueled her courage. She joined a local choir, her voice blending with others in a harmony that felt like home. She started writing again, filling notebooks with lyrics and stories she'd buried for years. Her family noticed the change. Claire even asked to read her songs, her curiosity genuine. But the past wasn't erased. At a family dinner a week later, Claire flinched when Evelyn laughed too loudly at a waiter's joke. Michael's sigh returned when she started humming at the table. Ethan rolled his eyes, though less sharply than before. Evelyn felt the familiar sting. But this time, she didn't shrink. I'm not changing who I am, she told them calmly. But I hope you'll learn to love it. Their silence was heavy, but their nods were a start. Evelyn began planning her next movie, a small concert with her choir, maybe even a solo. She wasn't just reclaiming her voice. She was building a life where her joy didn't depend on anyone's approval. The party had been a spark, but the fire was hers to tend. As she sat by the lake one evening, her notebook opened to a new song. She felt Tom's presence in the breeze, his voice whispering, keep singing, Evie. And she would for herself, for him, and for the family she hoped would one day sing along. Weeks after the party, Evelyn's life hummed with a new rhythm. Her choir rehearsals became the highlight of her week. Each note, she sang a step toward the woman she'd always been inside. She'd walk home under the stars, her heart light, her sapphire gown now hanging in her closet as a reminder of her courage. But her family's efforts to understand her were still a work in progress. Claire invited her to lunch, asking about her songwriting with a sincerity that felt new. Michael brought Ethan to her house for a Saturday of board games. And though Ethan groaned, he stayed, listening as Evelyn shared stories of her jazz club days. Small steps, but they carried weight. Yet doubts lingered. Evelyn wondered if their change was fleeting, a reaction to the party's spectacle rather than a true shift in their hearts. She saw it in the way Claire hesitated before hugging her, or how Michael's smile tightened when she got too loud. Ethan was the most open, his teenage cynicism softening into curiosity. But even he drifted back to his phone when her stories ran long. Evelyn didn't blame them, they were trying. In their way. But she'd tasted freedom. And she wasn't going back to dimming herself. One afternoon, while sorting through old photos, Evelyn found a picture of herself at 20. Midlife. Her eyes bright with dreams. She'd been bold then, unafraid of the world's judgment. Somewhere along the way, motherhood, loss, and time had quieted her. The party had rekindled that fire. But it also showed her how much she'd sacrificed to fit her family's mold. She tucked the photo into her notebook. A promise to that younger self, no more hiding. She decided to push further. The choir was planning a spring concert, and the director encouraged her to perform a solo her song from the party. Refined and polished. Evelyn hesitated, the memory of her family's past criticism sharp. But she agreed. This wasn't just about singing. It was about owning her story, flaws and all. She spent evenings revising her lyrics, weaving in lines about resilience and love, her pen moving with a confidence she hadn't felt in decades. Claire noticed the change first. "You're different, Mom," she said over coffee one morning. "Happier, I think." Evelyn nodded, stirring her tea. "I'm finding myself again," she said simply. Claire reached for her hand, her eyes soft. "I want to be part of that." It was a small moment, but it felt like a bridge. Michael, too, began to open up, sharing his own fears about aging, about not measuring up at work. Evelyn listened, realizing he was as lost in his own way as she'd been. Ethan surprised her most. He showed up one day with a battered guitar, asking if she'd teach him a few chords. "I saw Mr. Langston play at your party," he said, shrugging. "Thought it'd be cool to learn." Evelyn's heart swelled. They sat on her porch, strumming together, her laughter mingling with his clumsy notes. For the first time, she felt like he saw her not as grandma, but as a person with a life beyond his. As the concert approached, Evelyn invited her family, her voice steady but her heart racing. "It's important to me," she said. No hint of pleading. They promised to come, and she held on to that promise, fragile as it was. She also reached out to David, who offered to attend and cheer her on. "You're unstoppable, Evelyn," he texted, and she smiled, his words a quiet anchor. The night of the concert arrived. The community center aglow with soft lights and murmurs of anticipation. Evelyn stood backstage, her dress a deep emerald this time, her hand steady. She peeked at the audience, her friends, her neighbors, and there, in the front row, her family. Claire's smile was nervous but warm, Michael's nod encouraging, Ethan's eyes bright with something like pride. David sat a few rows back, his presence a quiet reassurance. When her name was called, Evelyn stepped into the spotlight, her song rising like a tide. The notes carried her story, her youth, her losses, her rediscovery. The audience leaned in, some crying, others nodding. Her family watched, rapt, their faces soft with something new, understanding. As the final note faded, the room erupted, and Evelyn stood, tears in her eyes, her heart full. She'd sung for herself, but their applause felt like a gift, a sign they were finally seeing her. The concert's echo lingered in Evelyn's soul as she stood backstage, the applause still ringing in her ears. Her family rushed to her, their faces alight with pride. Claire hugged her tightly, whispering, "I'm so proud of you, Mom." Michael's eyes were misty as he said, "I get it now. You're incredible." Ethan, usually so reserved, grinned and said, "You killed it, Grandma." Evelyn's heart swelled, but she held their praise lightly, knowing it was her own Kardashian, own journey that mattered most. In the weeks that followed, Evelyn's life blossomed. She performed with the choir regularly, her voice growing stronger with each song. She started a small songwriting group, sharing her lyrics with others who'd hidden their dreams too long. Her family joined her at rehearsals sometimes, their support tentative but growing. Claire began writing poetry, inspired by her mother's courage. Michael shared stories of his own, finding common ground in their love of music. Ethan practiced guitar with her, his awkward strumming a bridge between generations. David became a friend, joining her for coffee and jam sessions, his guitar blending with her voice. He never mentioned work, but Evelyn knew her family felt a new respect for her. Their embarrassing mother now a source of pride. The sting of their old words faded, replaced by a quiet understanding. One evening, as Evelyn sat by the lake with her notebook, Claire joined her, carrying 2 glasses of wine. "I was wrong about you, Mom," she said, her voice soft. "I thought your spark was too much. But it's what makes you, you." Evelyn smiled, clinking her glass against Claire's. "It's okay, sweetheart. I had to learn to love it myself." The stars reflected on the water, and Evelyn hummed her song, the one that had started it all. She wasn't just the woman who'd thrown a bold party or sung her heart out. She was Evelyn Harper, unapologetic and alive. Her family was learning to see her. But more importantly, she'd learned to see herself. And that was the greatest victory of all.